You let one comment from one person ruin an entire afternoon, and you still think the problem is them. Here is the costly mistake most people make. They believe that peace is the absence of difficult people. They think if they could just find the right job, the right neighborhood, the right circle of friends, the right partner, then finally the irritations would stop and they could breathe. They spend their whole lives rearranging the furniture of their external world, hunting for a room with no sharp edges. And they never once look at their own skin. Here is the truth nobody wants to say out loud. The difficult person is not the problem. The problem is that you have built a self so fragile that a stranger's bad mood can colonize it. Your peace isn't something others can steal from you. It's something you keep handing over. Say that again in your mind. Your peace isn't stolen. It's handed over. Every time you replay a conversation in the shower that happened 3 days ago. Every time you let a coworker's tone dictate whether you enjoy your evening. Every time you walk into a room already bracing for the judgment you assume is waiting there. You are not being attacked. You are participating in your own disturbance. And the cost of that participation is enormous. You still don't feel whole. You still don't feel like you. You move through your days performing a version of calm that collapses the moment someone looks at you the wrong way. You are not living. You are managing reactions. The Stoics understood something about human nature that most people still refuse to accept. People are going to be difficult. Not because the world is cruel, not because everyone is out to get you, but because people are people. They are driven by fears you cannot see. They are shaped by wounds you will never know about. They operate from a level of awareness that is often painfully narrow. And this is not an exception to the human experience. This is the human experience. Marcus Aurelius understood this at a depth that is almost unfathomable when you consider his position. He was the most powerful man in the world. He had access to anything, anyone, any comfort. And every single day, he sat down and wrote himself a reminder. He told himself that when he woke up, he would meet people who were jealous, ungrateful, arrogant, deceptive, envious, unsocial. He did not write this as a complaint. He did not write it as a lament. He wrote it as a man preparing for weather. Think about that. The Emperor of Rome, a man who could have anyone executed or exiled, chose to spend his morning anticipating that the people around him would be difficult, not because he was paranoid, because he was honest, and because he understood something fundamental about preparation. When you meet a difficult person unprepared, you are ambushed. When you meet that same person prepared, you are simply confirming what you already knew. Most people call this a mourning. The Stoics would call it a surrender. You wake up, you check your phone, you let the tone of the first message set the frequency of your nervous system, and then you walk out the door hoping that today, for once, people will be kind. You are hoping. The Stoic does not hope. The Stoic prepares. Here is what nobody tells you about hope. Hope is not a strategy. Hope is what you do when you have surrendered your agency. When you hope people will be decent, you are placing your entire inner state in their hands. You are saying, my peace today depends on whether the barista smiles, whether your boss is in a good mood, whether the person in traffic lets you merge. You have made the entire world responsible for how you feel. And then you wonder why you feel out of control. The morning practice of premeditation is not pessimism. It is the opposite. It is the most optimistic thing you can do because it says, I know what is coming, and I am already ready for it. You wake up and you tell yourself the truth. Today I will encounter people who are rude. Someone will cut me off. Someone will say something dismissive. Someone will misunderstand me. Someone will be petty. And none of it, not a single particle of it, can touch my character unless I hand it permission. That word, permission, hold on to it. It is the hinge on which everything turns. There is a distinction that most people never make, and it is the distinction that separates a person who is disturbed from a person who is harmed. Being disturbed is an emotional reaction. It is the spike of heat in your chest when someone insults you. It is the tightening in your jaw when someone dismisses you. It is the rush of defensiveness when someone questions your competence. These are natural. These are human. Even the Stoics did not claim you could eliminate the initial physiological response. What they insisted on, what they built their entire philosophy around, was what happens next. Being harmed is different. Being harmed is what happens when you take that initial disturbance and you adopt it. You weave it into your identity. You let it become the story you tell yourself about who you are. Someone calls you incompetent, and the disturbance is the flash of anger. The harm is when you spend the next 3 days trying to prove them wrong. Someone ignores you, and the disturbance is the sting of rejection. The harm is when you shrink yourself for the next week to avoid being seen. The disturbance is a wave. The harm is when you build your house in the wave's path. Marcus put it with a clarity that is almost brutal. He said that a person can only harm you if you believe they can. Their opinion, their judgment, their cruelty, their indifference, none of it has the power to degrade your character. Your character is the one thing that is entirely, irreducibly yours. It is the one territory where no army can march, no words can invade, no insult can take root. Unless you open the gate, unless you hand over the keys. Your peace isn't something others can steal from you. It's something you keep handing over. Now think about how often you hand it over. Think about the last time someone's comment sat with you for hours. Not just sat, festered. You replayed it. You rehearsed your response. You told a friend about it. You told 2 friends. You let it echo through your evening, through your dinner, through your sleep. And the person who said it? They were already on to the next thing. They forgot the comment before you finished reacting to it. You were the one who kept it alive. You were the one who gave it a home. This is what it costs you. Not just the afternoon. Not just the evening. It costs you yourself. Every time you let someone else's disturbance become your disturbance, you lose a piece of your own center. You become reactive. You become porous. You become a person whose internal state is a mirror of whatever room they walk into. And you wonder why you are exhausted. You wonder why you come home and feel like you have been wearing someone else's skin all day. It is because you have been. You have been wearing their moods, their judgments, their projections, and you have mistaken this for living. The Stoic alternative is not to stop caring. This is where people misunderstand. They think Stoicism means becoming cold, detached, indifferent. They picture a stone statue of a person who feels nothing. That is not what the Stoics taught. What they taught is far more radical and far more difficult. They taught that you can care deeply about people and still not be governed by them. You can love someone and not be destroyed by their opinion. You can be engaged in the world and still be anchored within it. The metaphor that Marcus returned to again and again was nature. He would look at the natural world and extract from it a logic that he applied to human behavior. A thorn exists on a rose. You do not argue with the thorn. You do not take it personally. You do not lie awake at night wondering why the thorn is there, what it did to deserve such a thing, whether the thorn has something against you. The thorn is part of the rose's nature. It exists because that is what roses do. Some roses have thorns. That is not a betrayal. That is botany. Now apply that to people. Some people are petty. Some people are insecure, and that insecurity comes out as cruelty. Some people are unconscious, and that unconsciousness comes out as thoughtlessness. This is not a betrayal of how the world should work. This is how the world works. When you meet a petty person, you are meeting a thorn. The thorn does not change who you are. The thorn is simply there. You can acknowledge it. You can navigate around it. You can even appreciate that the rose still has beauty despite it. But you do not argue with the thorn. You do not try to convince the thorn that it should not exist. You do not spend your afternoon being offended by the nature of a plant. And yet, when someone is rude to you, you argue with their nature constantly. You think, how could they say that? You think, they should know better. You think, this is not fair. You are arguing with the thorn. You are standing in the garden demanding that the rose apologize for its spikes. And while you stand there arguing, the afternoon is passing. Your life is passing. Your peace is draining out through the soles of your feet. The shift is not in what you do. The shift is in what you expect. Epictetus said something that sounds simple, but is one of the hardest practices a human being can adopt. He said, Do not demand that reality match your expectations. Adjust your preferences to align with what actually happens. Read that twice. Do not demand that reality match your expectations. This is not passivity. This is not resignation. This is the highest form of strength. It is the strength to see the world as it is and to act within it rather than spending your energy wishing it were different. When you expect people to be difficult, you are not being negative. You are being accurate, and accuracy is a form of power. When you expect that someone will misunderstand you today, and then they do, you are not disappointed. You are confirmed. And a person who is confirmed is a person who is prepared. A person who is prepared is a person who is free. Freedom, that is the word. The Stoics used it constantly. Not political freedom, not financial freedom, inner freedom. The freedom that exists when no external event, no person, no circumstance has the power to drag you out of yourself. This is the freedom that Marcus Aurelius had even as an emperor surrounded by sycophants and traitors and war. This is the freedom that Epictetus had even as a former slave with a crippled leg. This is the freedom that Seneca had even as he was exiled and eventually forced to take his own life. Their circumstances were not gentle. Their peace was not inherited. It was constructed, built brick by brick through a daily practice of seeing the world clearly and choosing their response to it. Your peace is the same. It is not inherited. It is not a personality trait. It is not something you are born with or born without. It is something you build. And you build it through the same practice. Through seeing people as they are. Through preparing for them in the morning. Through refusing to hand over the keys to your character every time someone says something that stings. Here is where the practice gets concrete. Because philosophy that stays in the abstract is just decoration. The Stoics were not interested in decoration. They were interested in training. They saw life as a gymnasium. Every interaction was a rep. Every difficult person was a piece of equipment designed to develop a specific virtue. Epictetus said this directly. He said that when you face an annoying person, you have been given an opportunity to practice patience. When you face someone who insults you, you have been given an opportunity to practice composure. When you face someone who is unjust, you have been given an opportunity to practice justice in return. Nothing is purely bad if it can serve as material for your growth. Nothing. Think about what that means in practice. You are standing in line at the store. The person in front of you is rude to the cashier. Your first response is the disturbance, the flash of judgment, the tightening. That is the wave. You feel it. You do not pretend it is not there. The Stoics were not about suppression. They were about examination. You feel the wave, and then you ask yourself, what is the belief underneath this wave? What am I telling myself about this moment that is making me react this way? This is the practice of examining your judgments. Marcus did this constantly. When something disturbed him, he did not just feel the disturbance and move on. He went underneath it. He looked for the belief that was generating the emotion. Because emotions do not come from events. Emotions come from interpretations of events. The person was rude. That is the event. The interpretation is, this person is disrespecting me, and disrespect is intolerable, and I must respond, or I am weak. That interpretation is where the suffering lies, not in the rudeness. In the story you tell yourself about the rudeness. And when you examine that story, when you actually look at it, you almost always find that it is irrational. It is exaggerated. It says things like, this always happens to me. It says, everyone is against me. It says, I cannot tolerate this. These are not facts. These are stories. And stories can be corrected. When you correct the story, the emotion follows. Not instantly, not perfectly, but it follows. Because the emotion was never about the event. It was about the meaning you assigned to the event. So the person was rude. The corrected story is, this person is having a difficult day or a difficult life, and their behavior is a reflection of their internal state, not my worth. Their rudeness is a thorn. I do not argue with thorns. I do not take thorns personally. I feel the prick and I keep walking. This is the training. And it is training. It is not a one-time realization. It is a daily practice. It is every single interaction, every single day, choosing to see the difficulty as material rather than as an attack. The difficult person is a sparring partner. They have been sent, not by fate in some mystical sense, but by the simple reality of living among other humans, to test your composure. To see if what you have built is real, or if it is just a theory you read about and agreed with. Because here's the thing. It is easy to be calm in a room by yourself. It is easy to be philosophical when no one is testing you. It is easy to talk about peace when the waters are still. The test is the difficult person. The test is the insult. The test is the dismissal. The test is the colleague who takes credit, the friend who is subtly competitive, the family member who knows exactly which button to press because they installed it. That is the test. And every test is an opportunity to either reinforce the old pattern or to build the new one. The old pattern is the one you know. Someone triggers you. You react. You spend hours processing. You tell people about it. You let it shape your mood. You let it shape your decisions. You let it shape who you are for the rest of the day. The old pattern is expensive. It costs you your time. It costs you your energy. It costs you your relationships, because a person who is constantly reactive is a person who is exhausting to be around. It costs you your self-respect because deep down, every time you hand over your peace, you know you have done it. You feel the smallness of it. You feel the surrender. And that feeling, that quiet knowledge that you are not in control of your own inner state, that is the most corrosive cost of all. The new pattern is different. The new pattern begins in the morning. Before you encounter anyone, you sit with yourself. You do not need an hour. You need a few honest minutes. You tell yourself the truth. Today I will meet people who are difficult. Some of them will be rude. Some will be dismissive. Some will be unfair. This is not a prediction. This is a fact of living among humans. And when I meet them, I will feel the initial disturbance, the flash, the tightening, and then I will pause. In that pause, I will remember that their behavior is a reflection of their nature, not my worth. I will remember that a thorn does not apologize for being a thorn. I will remember that this person is a sparring partner sent to test whether my practice is real. And I will choose my response. Not from reactivity, from principle. This is what it means to be prepared. Not armed, not defended. Prepared. There is a difference. A defended person is bracing for impact. They are tense. They are closed. They are expecting the worst, and they are ready to fight it. That is not peace. That is just a different form of war. A prepared person is different. A prepared person is open. They are relaxed. They know what is coming, and they have already decided how they will meet it. They are like a martial artist who has trained so many times that the response is in their body, not in their panic. Marcus understood this because he lived it. He was surrounded by people who wanted things from him, who lied to him, who betrayed him, who tried to use him. And he did not have the option of withdrawing from society. He was the emperor. He had to engage. The Stoic social strategy was never about withdrawal. It was never about running away to a mountaintop. It was about selective engagement with the right internal attitude. You do not avoid all difficult people. That is impossible unless you plan to never leave your house. You minimize contact with those who consistently drain you. Yes. You choose your close circle carefully. Yes. You spend time with people whose virtues elevate you, and you limit time with people whose vices infect you. But you will still encounter difficult people. In the checkout line, at work, in your own family. And the practice is not to avoid them. The practice is to meet them without being moved by them. Here is something that Marcus wrote that I want you to sit with. He reminded himself that he himself had faults, that he himself had wronged people, that he himself had been the difficult person in someone else's story. This is not self-flagellation. This is humility as a tool. When you remember that you have been careless, that you have been petty, that you have been the person who said the thoughtless thing, you stop seeing difficult people as monsters. You start seeing them as mirrors. They are doing what you have done. They are being what you have been. And this recognition does not excuse their behavior. It contextualizes it. It moves you from outrage to understanding. And understanding is not weakness. Understanding is the platform from which you can choose your response rather than being hijacked by your reaction. The compassion that Marcus practiced was not sentimental. It was structural. He looked at someone who wronged him, and he thought, this person does not know what is truly good or bad. They are acting from ignorance. They are acting from a distorted picture of the world. And rather than being angry, he felt something closer to pity or simply recognition. This is a person who is lost. This is a person who is acting from pain or fear or confusion. I do not need to join them in their confusion. I can see it. I can name it. And I can proceed with my own integrity intact. This is the practice. And I want to be clear about something. This practice is not easy. It is simple. But simple and easy are not the same thing. Easy is reacting. Easy is letting the emotion carry you. Easy is spending the afternoon stewing. Easy is texting 3 friends about what happened. Easy is the old pattern. The old pattern is the path of least resistance, and that is why almost everyone is on it. What I am describing is hard. It is hard to pause when you are triggered. It is hard to examine your own beliefs when what you really want to do is blame the other person. It is hard to wake up in the morning and tell yourself the truth about what the day will bring. It is hard to see someone who has hurt you and choose understanding over vengeance. It is hard to remember, in the heat of the moment, that this person cannot touch your character unless you let them. But hard is not the same as impossible. Hard is just hard. And the Stoics understood something that most people miss. The difficulty is the point. The difficulty is what makes you stronger. Epictetus said that every difficulty is a training exercise provided by life for developing some specific virtue. If that is true, and I believe it is, then every difficult person you encounter is not an obstacle. It is a curriculum. They are not in your life to hurt you. They are in your life to make you practice. And the more you practice, the more the practice becomes who you are. Not something you do, something you are. That is the shift. The shift from practicing peace to being peaceful. From trying not to react to naturally not reacting. From remembering that you should not hand over your keys to simply not handing them over. It does not happen overnight. It happens through thousands of small moments. Thousands of choices. Thousands of times when you feel the wave and you choose not to drown in it. And slowly, over time, you become someone who is not easily moved. Not because you are cold, because you are anchored. An anchored person is not indifferent to the world. An anchored person feels the waves, but does not become them. An anchored person can be in a room full of difficult people and still be themselves. An anchored person can hear an insult and feel the sting and still know who they are. This is the promise of the Stoic practice. Not a life without pain. Not a life without difficult people. But a life in which pain and difficult people do not get to write your story. Your peace isn't something others can steal from you. It's something you keep handing over. So stop handing it over. Not tomorrow. Not when you have read enough. Not when you feel ready. Now. Today. In the next conversation that goes sideways. In the next interaction that makes you bristle. That is not a problem. That is the rep. That is the training. That is the moment where you either reinforce who you have been or you begin building who you want to be. You wake up tomorrow morning. Before you reach for your phone, before you let the world pour in, you sit. You breathe. You tell yourself the truth. People will be difficult today. Things will not go as planned. You will be tempted to react. And none of it, not a single word, not a single slight, not a single dismissal, can touch who you are unless you agree to let it. Then you go out into the world, and you meet what comes, not with hope, with preparation, not with fragility, with practice, not with reactivity, with the quiet, unshakable knowledge that the thorn does not get to decide whether you enjoy the rose. That is your practice. That is your freedom. That is your peace. Stay anchored.